We are talking about retirement savings today with Synergy Credit Union, and today we have Alyssa joining us. And Alyssa, let us start by, you can say what your title is because it's a little too long for me to remember.
Okay. I'm a wealth services consultant with Synergy Credit Union and a mutual fund investment specialist with Credential Asset Management, Inc.
Okay, and as we said, we're going to be talking about retirement, and that's a big thing. A lot of people still try to plan for Freedom 55, although it doesn't work out so well for everybody. But when is actually a good time to consider saving for your retirement?
So I always go with the rule of thumb that it is better to start sooner rather than later. And it's never too early to start considering retirement. So the earlier you start, the less drastic everything is going to feel as far as the savings goes. And once you get a better concrete idea of what that's going to look like, retirement is going to look like, then the changes you have to make along the way are going to be a lot smaller and not feel quite so overwhelming. So a good example, I guess, I use in my meetings is that if you start at, say, saving 25 and only saving for 10 years versus maybe saving at 35 and not starting until then, you typically have to save 2.5 times more than what you would have if you started at 25.
Which is obviously much more difficult.
Yeah, so it just seems a lot more overwhelming. So the sooner you start, the better.
Now, if somebody does come to meet with you to discuss this, how does that work then, no matter what stage of life they're at?
For the process?
Yes.
So the process, it just starts with me really understanding what their current situation is. So some things that I would look at are their current financial situation, whether it's personally, financially, and that's the goals that they're looking to achieve and setting those out. But understanding what their current job is, do they have any group benefits, the group RSPs or pension through work, and some budgeting. So if they haven't worked through a budget, maybe we need to start working through that together to see what that looks like.
Right.
And some other things that are important in that process is getting a good understanding of what their current age is, of course, and maybe when they are hoping, whether it's a long target of when they're hoping to retire by, and some things that focusing on what it is that they can save each paycheck. And so it's really important to make sure that you are setting goals for yourself and to make sure that they are realistic and that it's not just going to be setting goals for just retirement, but there's other goals that you're going to need to set out for yourself as well.
Right, and you can help them to decide what those exact goals need to be then?
Yes. Yeah, so it's when we are looking at setting out goals, I find it's easiest when we take a look at 1, 3, 5, 10-year goals,
right,
to get a better understanding, because it's not just going to be one goal that you need to focus on. You need to focus on several over a certain time frame. And so when you can set it out over that 1, 3, 5, 10-year goal, it makes it feel a little bit more easier to attain that way. And so some goals that you might be setting out for yourselves, good thing actually to start your kids out really young.
Right.
For your kids, if they're wanting an electronic, maybe you can help them set that goal and how to reach that financially, or maybe it's saving for a car. But also maybe when you're younger and on your own, it's saving for a house or a wedding, or maybe it's doing renos when you're a little bit older and savings for kids for education.
So how do you know though how much you need to save?
So I don't know, I guess, that it's necessarily on how much you know you need to save, but more on what you can afford if you're starting younger. And so that kind of comes back to the process that I was speaking to earlier about understanding the budget and what you have to set aside for savings. Because if it was on a focus of what it is that you needed to save, it's really hard to figure out when you are younger. So it's going back to that process and making sure we can find that balance with the goals that we're setting out. Right. Because it is very overwhelming when you've got 3 or 4 different goals. And it's also really important to start considering to ensure that you've got the right things in place when you do have those savings.
Right.
As well. So there was a previous segment when we talked about the financial foundation and the importance of that.
Yep.
And so it's just making sure you've got the right education around it. So going to your financial institution and making sure you've got that in place. But it's also really important to make sure you've got a good understanding of what your budget is. Because if you don't have a budget, it's really easy to lose your money somewhere along the way and spend it somewhere.
Okay, thank you so much. We're out of time for this hour, but we'll be back with Alyssa in the next hour with more on retirement savings.